Hello and welcome to Anime Jack. I'm your host, Anime Jack.
Anime Jack!
So I've been having a huge nostalgia rush lately. I've been looking back at some of the old cartoons and live action shows that I used to watch when I was a kid, and just like really remembering what it was about these shows that made me love them so much. And in some cases wondering what it was about these shows that actually made me love them so much, because some of them I look back on them and it's just like, why did I ever like this? One of them that definitely deserved some love was one of the biggest fads of the 90s. I was a huge Pokemon fan as a kid. I mean, who wasn't, really? In the 90s it was just one of the biggest things to be into. I played the crap out of Red, Blue and Yellow version, I played a lot of Gold version, and then I got into my teenage years and it became uncool to play Pokemon, so I kind of avoided the games after that until I was finally old enough to appreciate the inner child within me, and then finally played Pokemon X on the 3DS, which was my first Pokemon game in years, and I really enjoyed it, even if I couldn't recognise half the Pokemon in it. Oi, when are you going to finish your Nuzlocke challenge? Shut up! So I thought while I'm riding a nostalgia wave at the moment, I'd take a look at something that actually came out 2 years ago and everybody's already reviewed to death, and review it myself. Because that makes sense. So I finally watched the Pokemon OVA, Pokemon Origins, which if you don't know, and if you don't know, I don't know how you don't know, because if you've been on the internet and follow Pokemon fandom, you probably do know what it is, and even if you don't, it was all around the internet for a while, so I don't know how you can't know. But if you don't know, Pokemon Origins is basically an anime adaptation of the actual game's plot. You're not going to see any of that boy Ash Ketchum here. Oh no, 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 no. This follows the story of Red. It more closely follows the plot of the games than the actual anime series we got in the 90s, which is still ongoing today, did, which often deteriorated and did its own thing. Blicky Orange Islands. And honestly, it was a really, really good OVA. I really enjoyed it. I was really into it. It amazes me that in just like... What's the total runtime of this whole plot? About an hour and a half? It amazes me that in an hour and a half they've accomplished more in that time than they have in the... How long's the Ash Ketchum anime been running? 10 years or so? Yeah, they accomplished more in an hour and a half than that series has in 10 years. That's just astounding to me. Hey Ash, maybe you'd actually win a league if you stopped releasing everything you catch. The slogan is, gotta catch 'em all, not catch 'em and then release them if the situation is dramatic enough. You are the worst trainer ever, aren't you? But yeah, getting back on point, this was actually a really fun OVA, and I actually wish they would do a full series of this because, you know, while things were enjoyable, the story was very abridged. And I know that's going to lead to some confusion when I use the term abridged when talking about an anime, because the internet seems to have distorted the meaning of the word. When I say abridged, I'm using it in its original sense, which meant to shorten or condense into a smaller size. I feel if they did this as a full series, they could accomplish so much more with the story. There's a lot of potential with it, and quite a lot of it is lived up to, but it feels like there's so much more they could have done. Like, Giovanni, I thought they had something very interesting there, and if they had had more time to expand on it, I think they could have had a really good plot point if they had had more time to expand on his relationship with Red and if we'd seen them interact a bit more. Because honestly, Giovanni's sudden turnaround in this OVA comes off as really rushed. It only really makes sense if you've already played the original games to begin with. If you're going into this without ever having played the original games, this sudden turnaround is going to feel a bit rushed and out of nowhere. But at the end of the day, that's really only a minor nitpick. For what they did within the time span that they did it in, it was really good. It was a fun ride and I honestly recommend watching it. The battles were really fast-paced and honestly kept it amusing the whole time. One thing I did particularly like was during Giovanni's battle with Red in the Silphco building, that we actually see their Pokemon do actual damage to the building because they're fighting in such a small confined space. That was really a nice touch, I thought. I liked seeing that these Pokemon battles can have consequences depending on where you battle, because in the games it's just like, oh, we're in the middle of a crowded building, oh well, let's have giant monsters fight. One thing that did amuse me, and this is true of all forms of Pokemon media, is this whole thing about how Red, or you, the trainer in the games, treat your Pokemon with respect, you treat them as friends, you treat them right, you raise them properly. By keeping them inside of small containers, basically keeping them inside cages and forcing them to fight for you. That's how you take care of your pets, kids. Keep them inside a cage and force them to fight. You keep creatures inside of cages and force them to fight for you? That is sick! But then again, when you break it down, Pokemon is one of the most disturbing foundations for a franchise ever. It's just wrapped in a cute blanket, so we all forgive it. Honestly, I recommend giving this OVA a view, even if you haven't really played a Pokemon game since Gen 1. And honestly, this is for you. This is for the Gen 1ers. This revolves around the Gen 1 plot. This is for you. This will give you a huge nostalgic rush of playing the games. Why actually play the games when you can watch an anime summary of the plot of the games? So if you're one of the few people who hasn't watched this OVA yet, I highly recommend you do. It gets an Anime Jack recommendation. Which is probably worth absolutely nothing. I'm really lonely, you know. Please like and favourite this video and leave a comment below. And if you're new here, maybe you'd like to subscribe to see all the great anime reviews I'm going to do. I use the term great very lightly. This is Anime Jack, signing off.